Good morning, Sunrisers. I'm Dr. Jansen, and today I have with me Dr. Emerson's daughter, Haley, and this here is Polar. Polar's a 10-year-old German Shepherd, and he presented to us because he had a lump on his tail. And the owners noticed this and noticed that he was irritating it, had started to bleed, and was cracking open. And so they brought him in to have it removed. And we actually ended up in a whole process with Polar with this because his parents elected to do the pre-op blood work, which we always recommend for any patient, but especially those that are older in age. And so when we checked his pre-op blood work, we actually found that his liver values were significantly elevated. So Polar had to have his surgery put on hold for a couple of weeks while we figured out his liver issues. And as soon as those cleared up and his blood work was nice and normal so that we could proceed with surgery, we elected to just take the mass off. And his mass was on the top aspect of his tail, so it was really in a difficult location to be able to get the entire mass as a whole. And so we got as much as we could. There's not a lot of skin, there's not a lot of extra tissue on that tail, so we got as much as we could. We sent it off to the lab, and they actually came back and said it was what we call a cutaneous hemangiosarcoma, which is a type of blood vessel cancer that manifested in his skin. And so once we got that diagnosis back with his age and everything else, and where it was located, it was actually in a really good spot. We checked his other lymph nodes, we checked his x-rays, we did an ultrasound on his belly to make sure that the cancer hadn't spread anywhere. And thankfully for Polar, he was all clear. So at that point, we decided to proceed with what we call a tail amputation, where we actually removed the tail as a whole further up from where the tumor was. And that allows us to get the entire amount of cancer cells that was left over from the previous surgery. And so Polar now matches his Vizsla sibling, and they have matching little docked tails, but he is doing fantastic. So if you notice that your pet has a lump, you never know what it may turn out to be. We can always check and make sure that it's something benign, but if it is something cancerous, we want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can for your pet, and I promise your pets will thank you.
WCBI Animal Health with Dr. Emerson was brought to you by Emerson Animal Hospital in West Point.